Hello, this is Omkar from BHyve, and we bring to you a brand new episode in our UnLearn HR series. Today, I'm extremely delighted to talk with Sunaina Vij from Third Bridge on the topic of how to increase the culture quotient at the workplace. Sunaina is an interculturalist, diversity and inclusion strategist, linguist, and a cultural intelligence facilitator. She has worked across sectors with people from over 40 countries. Her area of expertise is in cross cultural communication, team building, diversity, management, and working in inclusive strategies for organization. Thank you, Sunaina, so much for joining in today's session on Unlearn HR series. I'm personally very excited to have this conversation with you. Over the last 3 years, I'm just setting some context that, I started getting acquainted with the world of cross-cultural psychology. And a lot of times I started saying, Ki boss, aisa bhi hota hai? Do people really start acting differently if they're coming in from different nationalities? And starting off with empathizing with people from different nationalities, I think a lot of new learnings can emerge. And I think this is the need of the hour. Post pandemic, cultures are communicating with each other through virtual screens or through Zoom calls, and maintaining that kind of a culture quotient and enhancing it further is a beautiful space to be. So firstly, I'm appalled by the amazing profession what you have chosen and the expertise what you have. So thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you so much, Omkar, for having me here. The pleasure is mine. I'm very happy to talk about it.
It's perfect. So let's get it off the bat. I first want to dive deep into what exactly is having a culture quotient or culture awareness at the workplace, and why is it important, and more importantly, why is it important now? Right? People have been belonging to different cultures since the start of mankind. So why is culture quotient such an important topic to address at the workplace, and why as of 2021 right now?
Okay, so I think I'm going to first start by very briefly talking about what culture is. It's it's a vast topic, but I'll just give a brief introduction as to what culture is. So culture is basically how the society or the organization or a household wants individuals to behave. So it's like a framework, and this is how we behave. um, it is different from personalities, but like I said, it's a framework. So it's how we should be behaving. Okay, now that might sound funny, but we know that we all have cultures, boundaries. It can be a national culture, it can be an organizational culture, even households, like I mentioned, have cultures. So it is simply a set of framework. Now, a lot of times we do not realize that we are operating out of that, but the fact is that we all do. It culture gives us a lens, and we all view things from that lens. So, for example, in India, to keep it very simple, I'll give you a very simple example. In India, if I have a boss, how do I behave with my boss? Maybe a lot of times I don't have to be taught that explicitly. I acquire that culture by socializing, or maybe how my parents have told me or taught me about it, or my teachers. So it's a social conditioning also. And yeah, so that is what culture is. And like you said, why now? So culture was obviously always there, but it is the need to understand it even more is the need of the hour at the moment. Because I mean, just look at our workforce. Look at how diverse it has become in this century. Um, Globalization. So also because of virtual teams, well, thanks or no thanks to the pandemic, there are literally no boundaries. So if you talk about cross national culture or globalization, imagine the kind of diversity we have. Um, People have started moving out for studying, and students go to different countries to study. Coming to national cultures, if you just talk about the age, so how we have different generations now involved in our workforce, even the role of women. So there are many, like, really different um, reasons because of which our workforce has become so diverse. And not that culture was not important earlier. The understanding of culture and people has become even more important now. Because if I mean, we talk about being global and managing global teams, and imagine in a day a manager or a leader has to be with the team or a different client in the emerging market, and has to face, knowingly or unknowingly, so many different cultures, so many different people, so many different values, beliefs, and norms. And when we are unaware of them, imagine the kind of issues that can arise, right?
Yeah. So, in order to address these issues, right, your initiative, your venture, your profession, Third Bridge, um, what are the key highlights of the kind of value addition Third Bridge ends up doing with its clientele, specifically about enhancing the culture quotient, reducing tensions between cultures, maybe even increasing productivity and making people more adaptive. So, what firstly motivated you to start Third Bridge, and what are the key highlights of the benefits your clients experience?
Right. So I started as a linguist. I was teaching, I'm a specialist in teaching foreign languages. So that's how I started. And I was very, very young. And my clients were traveling and, they were engaged in international business. So while interacting with them, I thought that there was something missing. I mean, this is not maybe in the classroom, but outside the classroom setup, it was very different. Also, within the classroom, also, you need a lot of skills such as very, very managerial skills, I would say. It's not just, you go and do the traditional teaching, consensus building, because you have people from, say, a housewife to a pilot, or a 16-year-old kid to a 60-year-old person. So, that was my first formal but unknowing encounter with diversity, and people coming up to me and asking questions that, really got me thinking that what is missing. Even though we were talking about culture, but what was it that was missing, and why were people still engaging in those stereotypes that, oh, I'm going to go there and this is what is going to happen. Oh, I'm learning a language just so that I can break the ice. But very honestly, there was much more to it. So, I started researching, I started reading more about it, and that's how I kind of figured out the culture and the culture quotient. So I I'm a certified cultural quotient, cultural intelligence facilitator. So cultural intelligence is also known as CQ,
Yeah.
which is your cultural quotient. I studied that, and it just completely changed my perspective and understanding about what the whole cross cultural thing about. Earlier it was, even while I was teaching, it was more about how the other person is going to be. It was less about the importance of culture. So in on a daily basis, we while we are working, I mean, in at any point, at any given point, you're dealing with your kids, you're dealing with staff, you're in an organization. Everywhere you are, what are you doing? You are engaged in decision making, you are communicating with different people, you are relationship building. In an organization, you are running meetings. Now we have virtual teams, so team building. We are managing different kind of people and teams. We are also negotiating. So this was the world that I was introduced to, and I understood that how culture plays such an important part, and cultural quotient or cultural intelligence is, it's a four-factor model that is involved. um, it is a research based model. So how do you take that model and really plan and strategize and move ahead to becoming a global citizen, like literally I would say a global citizen, while you're handling anyone. So like I said, in our daily, on a daily basis also, we encounter so many different people that if we do not plan and if we are not self aware, it's very difficult and blunders are bound to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Talking about blunders which are bound to happen, and this is where I want to steer the conversation. That let's talk about mergers and acquisition because that is essentially where culture clashes, right? Culture clashes between organizations, culture clashes between nationalities, right? And I want to understand that how much of a role does culture quotient ends up playing with respect to with with respect to merging to cultures, to organizations. And we're talking about, you know, an American company acquiring a Japanese company or an Indian company acquiring another Indian company. Uh, what kind of cultural tension do you normally observe, and why is it so important for M&A leaders, M&A managers to actually start also investing towards culture building and culture matching?
Okay, so that's a very, very interesting question, and I can give you simplest of answers to very complicated ones there. Um, so M&A. Now, first of all, you yourself said an American company and say a Japanese company. So I will first explain what cultural intelligence is. Now, in just a very simple way, cultural intelligence is, how you adapt yourself across cultures. Now, it can be different nationalities, different age groups, like what we discussed. How everybody is different and how everyone comes with their own culture. So, here, if we talk about two different nationalities, a very important part of culture is understanding how people work.
Okay.
Okay, so now Japan, for example, is a very, very hierarchical society.
Yeah.
So decision making is very different. The role of a leader or a boss is very important. I am not saying that the role of a boss or a leader, say in an American company, a US based company, is less important. I am talking about the hierarchy in the society. So imagine yourself in that position. Of course, we are different from Japan and we are very different from um, the people in the US. But imagine yourself in a normal scenario, how you are in front of your boss, or how is the hierarchy structured in your organization. So that's a very, very big clash. What is the expectation? Now, is my American boss expecting me to very openly communicating with all of us? Does that happen in a Japanese company? Am I comfortable doing it? Is my non-verbal communication playing any role there? So communication. Now, so we pay a lot of attention on everything else when a merger is happening. The financials and everything else, but it is actually the people. When we talk about organizational culture also, it's the people who make that culture, right? So how is the decision making happening? A lot of times we miss that. How are we communicating? Is our expectation aligned? Imagine we have so many different kind of people in the team. We don't know our working styles, we don't understand the culture, we don't know whether we're supposed to work till the boss is in the office or not. We don't know if in a meeting I'm supposed to say something, give a feedback to my boss or not. So like I said, it's very simple things a lot of times we overlook, but they are so important. Imagine how one would manage a team without knowing its own people. So, overlooking that part in a merger and acquisition can really lead to failures. And there are enough studies and enough research material available um, showing us that not managing the culture part of it or understanding the people part of it leads to huge failures, because the working style is so different. So, cultural intelligence is nothing but understanding self, So bringing in self-awareness and understanding the others. Now it is not a foolproof method, but it's it's very important to create a strategy, you know, to first of all be willing to be in a situation like that and look how you can adapt, and then really creating a strategy, understanding what people are like. You know, a lot of times we just pat our backs for being normal, and we stereotype people. So for example, I've worked with a lot of different nationalities, and so for an Indian it would be, you know, they work in a certain way, they talk in a certain way, they look a certain way, where our unconscious bias also keeps working. Well, that's a different topic altogether. But imagine we leave that important part and not pay attention on that. So, I mean, if I just simply put it, why do you think Google has people analytics?
Yeah.
It's become such a huge part, you know, to understand how people are, to really have data driven strategies. So, for merger and acquisition, I would just say that if we don't understand our own people, the two different organizations and their cultures, there's bound to, we will have a clash, and there will be challenges and failures. So challenges are everywhere, but cultural quotient and bringing in that self-awareness really helps in the adaptability factor. And not just the HR leaders or the people involved in mergers, I feel across organization, especially the leaders, um, it's the need of the hour for the leaders to understand it and really walk the talk.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
absolutely. No, because all the time I observe, I've been a part of companies which have been merged. German companies, Korean companies, Danish companies, and it's so interesting because all these, like recently, I've been studying, and most of our clients, Scandinavian countries making roadways into the Indian market, and these are two very distinct cultures, right? High uncertainty avoidance, low uncertainty avoidance, collectivistic versus individualistic as much as the Scandinavian. Over here, what I observe is that there is a slow yet directed transition between people firstly having fair bit of ignorance about that. You know what? They'll gel themselves up. You don't have to invest effort towards awareness. Night, hey, this might cause problems and this might cause losses to the company. Towards then finally where I believe your help, your guidance come, where that awareness can be transformed into expertise. I wanna ask as my last question that as we discussed that M&A managers need to start looking beyond the financials, start looking beyond the very geographical perspective of merger and acquisition, but also start laying focus towards culture fitting, and maybe two cultures when they match or when they collide, a new culture is born, right? It's like a mix. So if an M&A manager, M&A leader is listening to this, and by now he's realized that I really need to start looking at culture quotient, what are the three key takeaways would you like to share with this kind of individual? That what are the next three things I should do as an M&A manager if I'm overlooking an M&A deal which involves international or cross national?
Right. So first of all, I think, you know, a part of it you answered it. Um, don't assume, don't think people will gel. Okay. And don't work out of stereotypes. So stereotypes are good. A lot of times they are bad, but a lot of times they are good because they give us a starting point, you know. So there are positive stereotypes as well. So don't just assume, you know, in not just in a different for a different nationality, even for our own people, you know, when we feel we are similar, it's not always like that, right? So do not assume. I would also say the second thing, very important, is clarify your goal of being in a cross cultural encounter. If you do not know why you are there,
Yeah.
you have to be willing, you know, understand your own goal. We need those profits, we need you know, that expansion, we need those diverse customers. And so it's very important to understand your own goal to be in that cross cultural encounter. And lastly, I would say is that, when you're in that encounter, um, look beyond tolerating cultural value differences. Instead, use them for, in a strategic way for innovation, for problem solving, and even decision making and negotiating, and exploring different markets. Ultimately, in a business scenario, we're there for that, right?
Yeah.
So if we look at it from a strategic point of view, then the whole game is changed. It's not just, oh my god, I have to do it, or we have to do it. It can really open up avenues, and that is what we are there in business for, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I really like that third point, that don't look this as a challenge, look at it as an opportunity where you take the best of both the cultures, or best of all the cultures what you have in the organization, play it with their strengths, and I think both the cultures will start uplifting each other. So yeah, I think this is brilliant. I'm sure all our viewers, listeners are going to start relooking at their culture strategy, start understanding, gaining awareness about culture quotient. So this has been delightful, Sunaina. I'm very thankful towards you, sharing all your wisdom, sharing all your expertise, and I hope that we can work together very soon.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.